Hello, and welcome to my first video. You might be wondering, why make a video about Habbo Hotel in 2021? Well, there's a lot of topical reasons, but the most personal reason is I was looking in the mirror the other day and I realized I've reverted back to exactly how I looked when I used to play this game. I mean, look at this guy. Spitting image. Well, except for the fact that he's got long, flowing, beautiful hair, those cute freckles, some squinty eyes, and he looks like some kind of weird androgynous model. But I digress. My hair may be stringy now, I may have developed acne in my 20s, and I'm starting to get some eye bags, but I'm working with what I got. I spent 3 years in film school. That's pretty stressful. You spend day in and day out realizing you're wasting your time and money on a completely useless degree when you could just cut out the middleman and make videos on your own. So here I am. Now on to the more topical reasons for this video. There's currently this weird civil war going on between the players of Habbo and the creators of Habbo. You might have heard that Flash was finally put to rest by Adobe earlier this month, rest in peace, and they took the original version of Habbo along with it. Now, seeing as Adobe announced the discontinuation of Flash way back in 2017, the creators of Habbo had plenty of time to port their game to a new engine. They decided to go with Unity. However, they did what I do when I have a school project, for example, and threw it together at the absolute last minute, haphazardly, and created a mess. This new version of the game looks like it was thrown together in 15 minutes before first period by some high school kid with a deadline. Why is this new version so bad? They took out features and they downgraded just about everything. There's this horrible phone-looking UI for a desktop client. They took out player-to-player trading. They added this janky vault system that everyone seems to hate, and they also added a leveling system to a chat room, so clearly they understand their player base. I don't know if they thought they were going to bring in a new audience for this, or if they're just trying to wring every last cent out of the old players they had, but you can't go from a small fortune to a big fortune just through playing the game anymore. You gotta break out dad's credit card. Taking out trading removed one of the biggest things in the game, and the players aren't happy. You can just see that right here. Look at all these people. Hashtag savehabbo. All the rooms say hashtag savehabbo. There's countless tweets about it, but there's like 400 players it seems, so I don't think it was trending. So to send out the old version of Habbo with a bang, since the new version's gonna inevitably die in a few months, I decided I'd recount my experiences with the game and go on a little bit of a nostalgia trip. Join me, shall you? It was the summer of 2005, I had just finished the 4th grade, and a friend of mine decided he would come over and introduce me to a game he'd been playing called
Habbo Hotel.
The very first thing Cody showed me, which should have been a sign of what was to come, was we entered a casino. If you thought CSGO introduced gambling to little kids, you're wrong. Habbo beat them to the punch nearly 10 years before CSGO was even a thing. The way casinos worked was a dealer would sit in a chair and surround himself in dice. He would roll, and then you would roll. The person who gets the highest number wins. Simple, right? So basically, you bet a piece of furniture. If you win, you get your piece of furniture back, and something of equal value on top. And if you lose, he keeps your furniture. Knowing Habbo Hotel, it definitely wasn't a 50-50 coin flip, because then they would never make any money. I was 10, so I don't really remember the house rules, but I'm sure it was skewed in the favor of the casino owner. One way these casino owners would actually make money is selling dealer statuses to people. And then, after you pay for your dealer position, that guy will just send all of his furniture to a new account and close the other one and start a new casino. And he'll be like, hey, do you want to apply for dealership status in this casino? And then you give him furniture to be dealer in that casino. And the cycle continues and continues and continues until that guy has 700 thrones and a ton of dragons that blow flames in the air. It's a really good economy. It's kind of like the stock market, I guess. So Cody sits down with his dealer. He bets a cabbage out of his weird, creepy, giant hand thing that comes off from the side of the screen. And he loses the bet. I wish I could say it was more climactic than that, and he won like 17 times in a row and became some kind of Habbo millionaire, but that's not what happened. In fact, what happened was kind of a much worse lesson for me, because it turns out he was friends with the dealer in this casino, and the guy just gave him his cabbage back. I just assumed that everyone in Habbo Hotel was going to be nice. If you bet and lost and you really wanted your furniture back, they might give it to you. People are going to help you out. And that just couldn't be further from the truth. So after Cody introduced me to the game, I spent the next several months amassing a wealth the likes of Habbo had never seen before. I had like 3 stools, 2 rubber duckies, and a piece of cabbage of my own. I felt absolutely rich. However, not long after amassing this wealth, tragedy would strike. This was a game full of scammers, pedophiles, and 10-year-olds. Thankfully, I never really had any run-ins with that pedophile problem they had, but I did have a lot of run-ins with those scammers. There were some sophisticated scamming operations, like phishing websites and keyloggers, but that's not always required when your victims are 10-year-olds. Sometimes you can just tell them that if they type their password into chat, it'll show up censored, because Habbo has security measures against that sort of thing. They say if you type it in, it'll show up as that weird made-up swear word, Baba. This, of course, wasn't true. You'd type it in, your password would show up, this guy would copy it down, log out of his account, log into yours, change the password, or dump all of your furniture onto his own account, and then he's in the wind. Because Habbo was the Wild West. They really didn't give a shit about scammers. You could report his account and it might get banned, but chances are he sent all that furniture to a new account anyway, and he never gave a shit about that first one. And no, Habbo doesn't give your furniture back. They just say your dumb 10-year-old ass should have been more careful, and everything you worked for is gone. How do I know this? Well, obviously I have my own experience with the scammer. One day I logged into my account and absolutely everything I had was gone. And when I contacted Habbo about it, their solution was to delete my account and tell me to make a new one. So helpful. I was heartbroken for a while. I didn't want to make a new account, but eventually I did. Jeff Hardy X was dead. X.JeffHardy.X was born. I was just left with one problem. I had lost my fortune. I had spent countless months participating in fallin furnies, Habbo foot races, and dating games just to win those 3 stools, 2 rubber duckies, and 1 cabbage. And it was all gone in an instant. This was unacceptable. Plus, I was getting real tired of looking at those cocky HCs with their fucking pom-pom hats and their HC badge and their cool-ass little green couches. I wanted to get me some of that. I'm not proud of what happened next, but I feel like I have to tell you just to be honest. I became a scammer in my own right. My grandparents used to live in my basement in their own apartment. I'm sorry, Grandma. One day, I snuck down the stairs like a real scumbag, picked up their landline, and called Habbo to order some credits. I might have done this multiple times. I spent maybe $50, $100, $200, maybe $300. I don't know. I was a kid. The point is, I spent hundreds of dollars on Habbo credits and disappointed those closest to me. And I was told I wasn't allowed to play the game anymore. Did that stop me? No. I just had to be more sneaky about it and go on when everyone was asleep. I couldn't let all that money go to waste. They just introduced pets to the game. I had to immediately get 2 dogs to represent my real-life dogs, Rascal and Pal. And fuck it, now that I had the credits, I was gonna get myself one of those pom-pom hats and that HC badge and one of those cool-ass green couches. I was rolling in the money at this point. I was getting rich. What did I do with this newfound fortune? Well, if you've been paying attention and you remember what my username was, obviously I opened up my own wrestling federation. That sounds like some shit that I just made up, but it absolutely was not. In fact, my federation was never popular, but there were some that would have full 60 cap rooms twice a week for shows. That's right, people wouldn't just roleplay as wrestlers, people would watch people roleplay as wrestlers. This was peak entertainment for me back in 2006. How did Habbo wrestling work, you might ask? Well, I'm such an OG that I experienced 2 different rule sets. First, there was the 10 moves rule, and the way this worked was the first person to type out 10 moves in a row would then say pin, and the referee would start counting 1, 2, 3. And you, as the other player, had to type kick before the referee got to 3. This was only around for a few months while I was playing, and it was quickly taken over by the RP rule set. And this, in hindsight, is a really janky sort of thing. The way the roleplay rule set worked was you would be trying to win but at the same time, you had to play along with the other player. You couldn't just spam moves and just make yourself some unkillable machine. You'd have to let the other guy hurt you sometimes to make it interesting. So you're trying to win, but you're also not trying to win. It was a real conflict of interest and something my 10-year-old brain just wasn't good with. That's why I never really got anywhere in these federations. There were some real legends. There was a guy named Tim Hortons who owned the HWE. There was a guy named the Wisp who owned the GWF. And I was like a little fanboy to these kids. I'd follow them around and I would just beg to be on their roster. I was only in a few shows myself, but you know what? Hey, look. 14 years later, and I just added .ca Wrestling Legend to my motto on my new account, and you can't take that away from me. There's no one to refute the evidence. Tim Hortons hasn't logged in 6 years, the Wisp hasn't logged in 6 years, just about everyone on my old friends list hasn't logged in 6 years. So, I'm the last one standing, and I get to write the history books. I am a Habbo Canada wrestling legend, and I demand a little bit of respect for that. Sometimes there would be turf wars with Habbo Wrestling, because back then there were multiple hotels. Sometime in the late 2000s they amalgamated them all into one, but back then there was a Canadian hotel, a US hotel, a UK hotel, a Japanese hotel, and countless others. So you might be having a show on Friday night, a wrestling show, and suddenly here comes the US hotel, or here comes the UK hotel to raid your show and try and mess it up. It was kind of like the Monday Night Wars when DX showed up on that giant tank, except way less cool and in a virtual chat room. Speaking of there being different hotels, I was of course on the Canadian version, and if you were from the Canadian version, you might remember the world-famous D&D Power Hour, run by the hotel manager W and his friend Dilius. It was this janky, weird internet radio show where they would play music and talk a little bit, and it was actually kind of fun to have in the background, having these weird third-party things outside of the game that you could participate in and talk about to your friends in the game. Habbo Wrestling wasn't the only role-playing operation in town, of course. There was a Hogwarts run by a guy named Zephyr. You'd basically go into his room, you'd get placed by a sorting hat into one of the houses. I think I got Gryffindor. I'm a main character. And then you'd go through a series of teleporters to different rooms and act like you were learning potions or wizardry. That's a interesting word to say. Wizardry. In hindsight, the creepiest part of the role-playing community was there were adoption agencies. That's right. People would pretend to be babies, and Habbo couples would come in and adopt them. Then they'd go back to the parents' room, and they'd pretend they're a family for a couple of hours. How do you pretend to be a baby in Habbo Hotel? Well, you basically just add W's into almost every word you say to seem like you're talking with that little baby accent. It's fucking horrifying to think about. There were a lot of other games outside of the role-playing community. There was, of course, Fallin Furni, there were dating games, there were foot races, there were mazes. These were all just basically ways to scam players into paying to play the game for a prize where 1 in 10 people would win. So of course the room owner's getting a ton of free furniture, well, you're just giving it to them for free basically. There was also a soccer league, a football league, and there was the HPPL, the Habbo Professional Paintball League, which I was involved in. The way that one worked was there was like a 10x10 grid with an obstacle course in it, and you'd move around, and if you got a direct line of sight with nothing blocking you and your opponent, you would type splat into chat, and then they would be out. I was a 3-time champion, and that was some goddamn bragging rights for young Taylor. Of course, this was all completely inconsequential to people who weren't into that part of Habbo. You couldn't just go to any room and be like, hey dude, I'm the Intercontinental Champion in the HWE, and I'm a 3-time HPPL World fucking Champion. You better respect me. They would just tell you to get the hell out of there because it's usually some fucking 70-year-old dude trying to bang a little kid. But I didn't know that at the time. I wanted everybody to like me. I certainly made a lot of friends playing Habbo Hotel back then, but I did make quite a few enemies as well. There was one in particular that I'll never forget. It was this guy named Blind Shorty, which is kind of interesting because my email at the time was flip0@hotmail.com, and if you know anything about skateboarding, that's just 4 different skateboarding companies. Blind and Shorty and Flippin' Zero. Clearly we should have been good friends, but we decided to be mortal enemies instead. He would always try to get me kicked out of Habbo wrestling organizations. He stole my Habbo girlfriend, whose name was Tara, and I would spend hours of my preteen life sitting in bed just absolutely molding. Or we'd be driving on a family trip somewhere, and I'd be looking out the window, listening to angsty-ass emo music, and saying, "This next angry song is dedicated to you, Blind Shorty. You piece of shit. You stole my girlfriend and you stole my wrestling career, and I'm gonna get back at you for that." So he got away with everything he did to me back then. Is it pathetic that I was this mad at a guy for stealing my virtual girlfriend? Yes. Is it even more pathetic that it's been 16 years and I still haven't forgot about it? Yes. But the joke's on him. I don't let a grudge go, Blind Shorty. If I see you in real life, there's gonna be fucking hell to pay. There's gonna be hell to pay.
Hell to pay.
Absolute hell to pay. The point of this video was to reminisce and pay tribute to a game that really shaped my childhood. It's honestly weird that when I played this game, I was closer to the beginning of my life than to where I am now in my life. I was 10 years old. I'm 26 now. I played this game 16 years ago, and I still feel a lot of love for it. But I'm willing to let it go and lay it to rest. I'm not going to be one of those warriors on Reddit saying they need to fix the game and bring it back. I don't want to keep it on life support. It's this weird dementia version of what it used to be. I don't want to remember the game for how it is now. I want to remember the game for how it was when I loved it in 2006. I would come home from a long day of class where I only had a few friends, and I would spend the next 6 to 8 hours talking to my dozens of friends in Habbo Hotel. It was a great experience, and it's gone. And that might be for the better. There's better alternatives now. There's Discord, there's FaceTime, everyone has a phone in their pocket, and online gaming is better than it's ever been. I spend most of my time talking to my friends on the internet now in other platforms. I don't need Habbo Hotel anymore. That's sad to say, but it's how it is. So as much as I shit on the game and talk about all the silly shit and all the enemies I had, it was a great time and I wouldn't trade it for the world. So this is my goodbye to Habbo Hotel. Thanks for the memories, you fucking janky ass game. See you next week. Thank you for watching this video. You made it all the way to the end, so why not like and subscribe? I'll post another one next week. If you have anything you'd like me to talk about, feel free to post it in the comments below, and I might get to it. Bye-bye.